And once we separate, not so much as separate spirituality from religions, and understand that out of our spirituality came the world's religions, the God concept of those religions, of Judaism, Christianity, or Islam, came out of what I refer to as three-God religions. I don't use that anymore because people don't understand what I mean about three-God religions. They're so accustomed to the word God, they cannot understand that there was a time when man thought of a force in the universe presiding over the universe, and while he meant God, he did not use the word God, and man had more spirituality before he consistently used the word God. He used the God force and the God concept without using the word. He meant the same thing, and ultimately Western man interpreted that as meaning the same thing. Spirituality is a way of accepting the fact that there is a spiritual force in the universe larger than all of mankind.
Let's go back during the time of antiquity. The word antiquity means ancient time.
Yes.
There was no religion, no place on planet Earth. You have to realize that. Going back into Africa, you will find the Africans living in the continent of Africa not having a religion, but they had a spiritual way of life that included the ancient Egyptians also. They paid homage to their ancestors. They paid homage to nature. They knew the laws, the cosmic laws of the universe, and they lived their lives according to these various laws of the universe.
Man must be in harmony with nature. Man must not be in a violent struggle against the elements. And that man and God and nature are in partnership one to the others. And all of the elements with man, and all life is linked together in cause and effect. In a harmonious chain, there was no death, but a continuation of life. And the European concept of life is a violation of harmony. When you look at Russia and the United States, look at their struggle to control the world. It makes no sense. It is out of harmony. Not only with nature, it is out of harmony with common sense. It is a violation of nature to poison the air, to endanger babies. Nature gave you fresh air to breathe. You throw everything out of harmony when you put poison in the air. God created the spring, God created wind to purify the air. He didn't do this for man to put chemicals and spoil the air so that the child couldn't breathe. The African thought about all of this as part of the totality of life. So his religion stemmed out of bringing life in line with the harmony of God's creation. And if we are to create a new way and a new harmony and a new decency for all people, we must bring things in harmony with nature. Because this is the basis of what this ancient African did. This is why he could have 3,000 years without a war.
Now when we see something like this again, Well, our ancestors were into something deep. But again, look very closely. Now that we have broken that down, you see that this person has become what is called a netter, or a spiritual one, or has become God-like, because he rose up his pineal gland. As you see the serpent here, now his third eye is open. His spiritual eye is open. Okay? So again, we looked at nature. We used symbols. Why did we use symbols? Because symbols operated on the collective consciousness of the mind. Okay? We still have, as Brother Dr. Richard King pointed out, which he expounds on this very well from his research, that even though they have destroyed our libraries, they have not destroyed our genetic libraries that's in us. It's just lying there dormant. All we have to do is open it up.
It is here that our ancestors had us study from the 42 books of Tahuti, representing science, law, and intelligence, who was represented as the ibis bird that you saw. We saw those little white birds that we saw come over here. So our ancestors looked at nature. We didn't worship the bird, but it was an attribute of science, attribute of intelligence. Tahuti writing down the deeds of our life on earth as we lived here. This is where the Western philosophical thought, Greeks took their concept of Hermes Trismegistus from Tahuti, now called thought too.
Again, our ancestors looked at nature to symbolize various attributes of nature. We did not worship insects. We did not worship animals. Okay? They represented various attributes of nature. For instance, the little scarab beetle was symbolized as the great mind. Why? Because the top of the little scarab beetle was identical to the top of the cranial cavity of the brain. So the little scarab was looked at as the great mind of Ptah. That was Ptah's symbol, the scarab that created the universe. Also how the scarab, okay, would roll up his dung, okay, and make the sun. That was a symbol of being self-created, because the eggs would have to feed from the dung, and that was a symbolic as being self-created. Now, when we see something like this, we say, I sure don't understand what our ancestors was doing back in those days. They put this big bug on this body. What in the world is this? What you see here, remember I said, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth was without form and void, and the Spirit of God moved across the deep. Okay? So we see nothing but darkness. The scarab symbolized Ptah, black. The red body symbolized the sun that was created. Our ancestors saw ourselves in relationship with that of nature. We were totally connected with nature. We did not worship animals and insects. There were various attributes because we looked at nature for our communication. Okay? That's why we were not destructive towards nature. So what we see is mind over body. And that's how we see the little scarab creating the sun, because it's red like you see the body here as being red. The body was looked at as the great sun. That's why you call your sun the sun today. Symbolized as that sun. Okay? So here we see the little scarab rolling up the dung was symbolic as how Ptah rolled up the sun in the universe and created the light. This was all symbolic and all various attributes.
We need to look back and study our origins and where we came from. Try now to imagine Earth in prehistoric times, a place filled with a multitude of dangers, giant animals and reptiles, huge predators, earthquakes, volcanoes, tornadoes and meteors, and the subsequent fear and hostility such an unfriendly environment would breed. If you could be a time traveler and be spirited back to these ancient times, complete with all the sophisticated modern knowledge you now have, admit it, you'd be scared to death. I know I would be. Now try to imagine what it must have been like for these ancient people, totally devoid of all the knowledge we now take for granted about the awesome forces of nature. A volcano erupts, destroying everything in its path. The sky reverberates with thunder as a violent electrical storm hurls thunderbolts to earth, which start fires. Tornadoes sweep people, animals, and trees away into the sky. The earth opens up and an earthquake swallows a village in the twinkling of an eye. Gazing up into those fearsome skies filled with infinite numbers of stars, not to mention shooting stars, without having the remotest idea of what they were, lacking any form of scientific explanation. Is it any wonder that these ancient peoples created a myriad of all-powerful nature gods and the countless myths that surrounded them? The gods which have been worshipped and sacrificed to for thousands of years since, than the sun, which became known as God's sun, the light of the world. Human beings are the only creatures capable of the process of logical thought, of imagination, and of questioning everything around them.
Now you can see all three pyramids. Now on the further back is the pyramid of Khufu, Khafra, and Menkaure. Keep in mind, brothers and sisters, that our ancestors had astronomical science, astrology, where they studied the stars and so forth. One of the things that's been brought to astronomers' attention is that they noticed that the pyramid of Khufu and Khafra, if you notice right here, are in a perfect alignment. Okay? It's a perfect alignment. But the question is that why would such a perfect alignment and perfect structure where they built the small pyramid of Menkaure off course? Can you see it off course? Yeah. But what they found, though, is that our ancestors were building the pyramids in alignment with the stars, that they were in rhythm with the astrology and the astronomical science of the universe, science of astrology or the study of the stars. And what they found is that the star system Orion was the star system of Osiris. Remember, the king wants to become one with Osiris. So by aligning the pyramid of Khufu, Khafra, and Menkaure with Orion, and that's why they built the pyramid of Menkaure slightly over and not in alignment, because the pyramids were built off the alignment of the star system Orion. The star system Ceres was Isis. So our ancestors, in essence, were building heaven on earth. They were taking the science of the stars and building the pyramids exactly as they saw the heavenly body, or the cosmological universe. Figure out why Menkaure's pyramid was not in a perfect alignment, but it fits with the alignment of the star system Orion. As well as the other pyramid layout, it fits into the constellation that our ancestors saw of Osiris. And that is the constellation of the man that they have today as a figure of a man. So you can take and put the star system Orion right over the pyramid of Khufu, Khafra, and Menkaure and see why they had the alignment of Menkaure slightly over, because it fit with the star system Orion, because the purpose was for the soul to ascend into heaven, for the spirit to ascend into heaven, to become one with Osiris. And the star system Orion was connected with Osiris. Keep in mind that the star system Orion was aligned perfectly with the chambers of the pyramids that we're going to deal with later on in our lecture series when we get into it. So this is serious knowledge to show you how profound our ancestors saw that they were building and with the constellation of the universe. Tomorrow when you go into Saqqara, you're also going to see the pyramid of Unis, showing the first concept of ascension into heaven. Long before there was Christianity, long before there were little white angels with wings under, that we get a concept that we're going to go to heaven, Unis already had the concept of ascension into heaven, or a spirit going into heaven, known as astrotheology. So this is what our ancestors saw, the soul becoming one with the great god Osiris in the constellation of Orion, which was the symbol for Osiris. And the star system Ceres was for Isis. Powerful astronomical knowledge that our ancestors had, showing how in tune our ancestors were with the heavenly bodies. In essence, building heaven on earth.
Spirituality is a way of accepting the fact that there is a spiritual force in the universe larger than all of mankind. But someone had to come along and invent a word called God. And someone had to say of another God and say, mine is better than yours. And someone had to create faith. Someone said, I have the true faith. Religion is the organization of spirituality into something that became the handmaiden of conquerors. Nearly all religions were brought to people and imposed on people by conquerors and used as the framework to control their minds. My main point here is that if you are the child of God and God is a part of you, then in your imagination, God's supposed to look like you. And when you accept a picture of the deity assigned to you by another people, you become the spiritual prisoners of that other people.
The representation of God should always be the great. It should always be the black, because it can produce all things. The representation representation of God should always be the great. It should always be the black, because it can produce all things. The representation of God should always be the great. It should always be the black, because it can produce all things. The representation of God should always be the great. It should always be the black, because it can produce all things.